Assalamu alaikum students, welcome to another course, another lecture that we are going to start today, a very important lecture. And today officially we are going to start the last lecture of this course. You might be thinking why it is the last lecture. You know that the next lecture would be 32nd lecture, and that would be the review lecture, right? So today the last topic that we had to discuss, and we are here by the grace of Almighty Allah to discuss this topic in this 31st lecture that we have planned. So the lecture title is, it's there in front of you, I hope you can see it, Autonomy in Language Learning, very important area, that the learner should be autonomous, right? So autonomy of a language learner is important. So we being teacher of this language, we being teacher of English, right? So we have to ensure this autonomy so that the learner would learn language well, because you see it's a quite natural way that if you provide ideal environment to your learner, and if learner is independent, a learner has autonomy, so he would learn more, right? If you compare it with an environment where learner is not autonomous, right? Learner does not have control, so things can be difficult for the learner. So that's why this is an important area that we will discuss, that what is autonomy in language learning, and being teachers, of course, of this course, how can we have this autonomy, how can we ensure autonomy for a language learner. So as usual, first of all, we have to review the previous lecture. So in the last lecture we talked about, if you remember, first language acquisition, and we also talk about second language acquisition or second language learning. So we discussed that the first language acquisition, the L1 that we acquire, of course we become the speakers of L1. And how do we acquire that? We listen to our siblings, we listen to our parents, right? And we talked about theories as well. We talked about behaviorist approach, and we talked about innate approach, right? The language faculties there, we refer to Noam Chomsky, and we refer to B.F. Skinner's, of course, behavioral approach, right? So we had a discussion on it, and then we talked about, in fact, constructivism. You see that what happens, that you construct ideas, and of course we discussed that behavioral theory was the foundation stone of constructivism. So these are some areas we talked about, and then we saw that why we learn second language, right? Before that we discussed the importance of second language learning, and we saw that every language that you learn other than your L1 is language 2 or the second language, right? And we also discussed that the context, of course, the second language learning, right, context, and the foreign language context, you see. And we talked about that when you teach language in an environment where it is the language of communication, so over there it is a second language, and whereas if you teach language in an environment where it is not language of communication, so we call it foreign language. Like in Pakistan, when you teach English, so it is a foreign language. Why it is a foreign language? The context is because it is not the language of communication, right? We use Urdu, we use the other regional languages for communication. So we teach language. That's why it is a foreign language, and our course is TEFL, right? Teaching of English as a foreign language. However, if you move to a place where it is the language of communication and you have to teach this language, so over there would be TESOL mean, right, as a second language. So that's what we had a discussion on that, and we also talked about stages of the first language learning. If you remember that pre-language stage, right, and we talked about one word stage, and we talked about two word stages. So all these areas we had a discussion on that. So these were the points that we discussed in the last lecture: language 1 acquisition and language 2 learning. And I also told you that when do we use this acquisition, language acquisition and language learning, and of course it's still debatable, right? People think that every language other than the L1 that you learn is language learning, and however the L1 that you acquire is language acquisition. So L1 and L2, and we saw that why we focus on L1 acquisition, and we reached the conclusion that the way we acquired L1, more or less we follow the same procedures for learning our L2, right? We saw that L1 acquisition requires listening, L1 acquisition requires reading, L1 acquisition requires, in fact, speaking, and finally writing. So same, I mean, all these skills that we in fact learn when we try to learn a foreign language. And of course, I mean, you must have seen the language centers. So when you go to a language center to learn language, so the teachers in that center, what they do, that they in fact, of course, teach you reading skills, writing skills, listening skills, and speaking skills, right? So of course, once you once you become a good reader, good writer, good listener, and good speaker, so it means you are able to speak that language. And again, of course, once you adopt all these things, you try to be good speaker, reader, writer, and listener, so you start thinking in that language as well, right? So these were some of the points that we had a discussion in our last lecture, that what is L1 acquisition, what is language 2 learning, right? And what are the stages of L1, right? L1 acquisition, and then how do we learn a second language, right? And why do we learn second language, right? And then other important areas, you see, we talked about. You can review, you can go back to that lecture and see other important points that we talked about. Let's start. Today's lecture is important, that is learners' autonomy in language learning. So this lecture is important, my dear students. See, the autonomous learning, what does autonomous learning means, in fact, right? So look at here, autonomous learning, what does it mean, right? Control over the learning process. If I show you the slides, see here. All right. So autonomy, in fact, simple word, I mean, you know, is that the learner is autonomous learner, in fact. You have autonomy, right? So what does it mean? Control over the learning process, right? That the way you learn, of course, I mean, in one way is that, you see, if I spoon feed you things, right? So if I spoon feed you, that here means that the learner is not autonomous, in fact. And you know, because we are teaching language and the learner is learning language. So for this process, for teaching a language and for the learning a language, autonomy of the learner is important. But once he is autonomous, then he would learn language in a better way. Why? Because language is an area that encapsulates a lot. Every situation demands a different language expression, language exponent. So while being part of a situation, you in fact you prepare yourself for different situations. We cannot confine ourselves to one area, that these are the expressions. If I know these expressions, I'll be able to learn language. So that's why learner's autonomy is important, because if the learner is autonomous, so he would in fact he would explore things, right? And he would put himself in different situations. So in this way, his learning would be better. So that's why, of course, the autonomy, of course, of learner is important. Acquiring learner, what learning strategies. If the learner is autonomous, then he would try to acquire, I mean, whatever learning strategies, right, of course, suit him, learner would try to acquire them. If the learner is comfortable at reading, learner is comfortable at writing, fine, because it varies from a learner to learner. Some learners, of course, they learn well by taking part in an activity, and some learners learn well when they get feedback from the people. So again, the learning styles are different. So that's why, of course, when a learner acquires the learning strategies, so this shows his autonomy, right? This acquiring ways to use strategies without the help of a teacher, like learner is autonomous. And you know, my dear student, that of course the teacher is there for 1 hour, teacher is there maybe for 4 or 5 hours. So the rest the learner has to. So here again, the responsibility of the learner to learn. If the learner is responsible, so he would learn, right? So if the learner is not responsible, so the learning would be difficult. So that's why, of course, the learner has to put efforts. Here is the Thompson 1996. We are born independent students, but when we learn a language, autonomous learning becomes difficult, and we prefer the direction of a teacher. This is one of, a comment by Thompson's viewpoint, that here Thompson says that, of course, when we learn a language, though we are independent student, but when we learn a language, so we need input from our teacher. So more control are our objectives, right? When you are autonomous, so you are free, and you want to achieve your objectives, because there is no in fact intervention from any third party. In fact, you know that you have to communicate in this language. You understand that you have to be good presenter in this language, so then you can achieve, and you are autonomous, in fact, because simply, a very simple example is that if you know you have to reach this place, right? That is your objective, and then you will explore how to reach that place if you're autonomous. Otherwise, you will follow this direction, that this is the way. You would follow this road, and finally you get there. But if you explore things, if you are autonomous, right, then you will, of course, explore more ways. You will ask more people. So definitely that would be better. So more control over the ways in which we learn. If I know my learning strategies, so it means those strategies are in my control. If I follow somebody else's learning strategy, so maybe being a student, I might not be able to go with that strategy. That's why learner's autonomy is important. If I say that, well, reading is very important skill, fine, and of course we cannot learn writing unless we read, right? If it's my direction, for example. But maybe the learner, of course, there is a learner I told you earlier that every learner has a different strategies. Every learner, in fact, learns differently. Right? So since different learners, in fact, learn differently, so their autonomy is important. In fact, maybe a learner, of course, can write well, just, of course, having discuss things with people just by thinking, right? So this is one. The point is that your learner should be autonomous, in fact, right? So autonomous learning offers learners the freedom to take decisions on content, organization, place of study, right, and pace of study, in fact. So again, that this autonomous learning, right, what happens, that the learner, in fact, gets what? Freedom to take on the content. That which content, like here again I will go to SARS, that the learner selects this is the best part, right, and the learner adapts it as per his requirements, and then of course maybe in fact some part the learner might reject, right, and then learner would need supplements to it, right. So that's why when the learner is autonomous in language learning, so again he would not he would not in fact confine himself. He would not in fact limit himself to a certain situation. So what he does when he is an autonomous learner, so he would be free, right, and of course while selecting the content, right, because learner knows that he has to learn, and then what he does, that he in fact of course asks people, he tries to find more ways, fine, for the content, and also organization, and finally what? Pace of study, right, students? Do you understand? So these are the, of course, when you are autonomous learner, you have these things, right? Autonomous learner is fine. Another word is he is a methodical and disciplined, logical and analytical, reflective, flexible, responsible, persistent, creative, and willing to take risk, and of course confident, aware of the learning process, able to assess and criticize, right? So these are what mean autonomous learner is. He is methodical, right? So he follows methods, right? Because he knows that he has to reach there. He knows he has to write in this language. He knows he has to communicate in this language. He knows he has to interact in this language. He knows he has to communicate in this language. So when the learner is autonomous, he is more methodical. But I mean, simple, of course, if he's not, then he follows the directions, in fact. Then he cannot explore. He cannot, I mean, learn more, because, I mean, he would do whatever you would tell him, of course. Like he would be a lakir ka fakir, in fact. He would be a trodden tracks. He'd be following trodden tracks. जो बात आप उसको कहेंगे वही करेगा, right? However, if the learner is autonomous, तो उसके लिए ज़मीन, of course, he has to explore things, in fact. उसके लिए, I mean, a lot has to be explored, and he would be methodical, right? And also disciplined. उसे पता है what to do, in fact. And he knows how to do. He knows what to explore and all that. Then logical and analytical, of course, right? Definitely, of course, if the learner is autonomous learner, right, so he tries to be logical also, right? Because you know, when you know the ins and outs of things, when you know in fact the nuts and bolts of a process, then you become more logical. I mean, sometimes, of course, your concepts are not clear. You don't know the basics of something, and then whatever people tell you, you follow it, right? So therefore, right, an autonomous learner is logical. Also, he is analytical, right? Autonomous learner is analytical. He analyzes things. He also reflects, right? So whenever, I mean, it is a turn for the learner to reflect back something, to give something back, so he reflects, or he is flexible. He is not rigid at all, right? Autonomous learner is not rigid, and responsible and persistent also, right? Learner is autonomous, so he is what? Responsible learner, right? He knows his responsibilities, right? And then he pursues them, right? Of course, I mean he does respect his teacher, but since the teacher has given him this autonomy, the teacher has given him some ways, so he tries to do that. And also persistent in studies. He doesn't work by fits and starts. He works regularly. He is more regular, and he's also persistent in his attempts, right? That, of course, whatever directions he receives, he tries to evaluate them, and then he knows his method, and he tries to persist in. Creative and willing to take risks, in fact. Of course, a learner that if he's autonomous, so he's creative. He creates things, and also willing to take risks. He's confident as well, right? So my dear students, autonomous learner is confident. Why? Because, you know, he starts things on his own, and he explores things, and in this process of exploration, he encounters so many problems, right? And once he encounters problems, he tries to address them, right? And once he addresses the problems, he gains confidence. And of course, whenever something is asked to him, so he tries to address them, right? Aware of the learning process. Again, it's very important, because he knows that this is my process of learning, and if I am not able to learn, what are the problems in this learning? And of course, in the same way, he tries to address the problems. Able to assess and criticize, an autonomous learner, right? Because he is reflective, and he is flexible, and he is responsible. So definitely he can analyze things, of course, and also he can criticize things. So my dear students, this is what an autonomous learner is. Well, students, so we talked about that who is an autonomous learner. Now, an autonomous learner, before starting his work, he must accept responsibility for his studies, right? If I am an autonomous learner, if my mentors, my teachers have given me responsibility, if my teachers trust me, if my teachers in fact knows me, right? So then I have to accept my responsibility for my studies, right? So autonomous learner is the one who accepts his responsibility. Like we talked about earlier, he's more responsible, right? He knows his limits. He knows his time management. He knows his can. He knows his power. He knows his intelligence, and accordingly he makes plans and follow them. And he understands the aim of his studies, right? He knows that, well, I have to interact, I have to communicate in this language. This is the aim that I have to achieve, and since he's autonomous, so he tries to achieve them. And of course he knows his level of language, right? If you are, you are teaching him English, right? And if your learners are autonomous learner, they know that where do they stand, right? And once they know their level of understanding, so accordingly, you see, they make plans. They identify, of course, immediate aims. I hope you understand, right? So a responsible learner identify his immediate aims, right? So an autonomous learner, what he does, that he plans, right? His learning program, the use of diary is useful. When the student writes a learning plan, the level of involvement increases, right? So say, in simple words, of course, that, well, it's all being repetition, that whenever a learner is autonomous learner, so he knows his problems, he knows his ways to address them, right? And he knows that how he can seek help, and since he's responsible, so he knows his objectives and he tries to achieve them. And he also knows his learning process. Well, students, so an autonomous learner doesn't need to be alone. This is very, very important point. That's why you see that an autonomous learner is the one who doesn't need to be alone, right? Why we say that he's not alone? My point is that, you see, if you are an autonomous learner, you know how to explore things, you know how to seek help, you know how to browse different websites, you know how to visit libraries, you know how to use different websites, you know how to in fact make plans, you know how to address problems. So which means he's not alone, right? Autonomous learner does not need to be alone. Autonomous learning does not mean isolated learning, right? Several studies have shown that many aspects of learning are best done with other students, right? It can be student groups, in fact. And definitely, of course, now is the time that we live in this age where we have access to latest technology. You can make groups on internet, right? If you are wherever you are, like, so your virtual ComStats, in fact, of course, provides you education wherever you are, right? So using internet, using the latest means of technology, you can form groups, right? And you can interact over the globe, right? So that is the global level interaction through voice chat, through, of course, emails, through, in fact, through Facebook, through different social media. You can, in fact, interact with the students wherever they are, in fact. Locally, of course, you can make your groups in your class, right? You have, of course, the groups study is very important, right? So combined studies, yes, of course, has value over the individual studies. Why? Because once people sit together, they in fact interact, they discuss things. So that discussion, that learning, in fact, of course, is a long-term learning, and students, in fact, generally do not forget that point whichever they have discussed with others, right? So that's why the group study is important, right? Of course, you have the chat, you can have a chat with students. So these are, of course, some of the ways that we can say that an autonomous learner is not alone. So he can have a chat with friends, he can use latest technology to form groups, and in the class, of course, you can have groups, right? And you can study in that group. So in short, we can say that the learner who is autonomous, he is not alone at all. Now the question is that why is English so difficult? If I ask you this question, do you think English is difficult? Yes. Okay, why English is difficult for you? Idioms are there. Okay, fine, I agree that you have to learn these idioms, so English is difficult. What else? You must have talked about assets and liabilities of English, right? Maybe in your I'm sure in the first semester, you had a subject, history of English language, and over there, I mean, you talked about assets and liabilities of English. So see that the topic, what are the assets, mean the plus points, and what are the liabilities, mean the weak points of English, right? These liabilities, in fact, of course, make this language a bit difficult. I mean, idioms are there. Why? Because you have to learn these idioms, right? At times sounds create problem, right? So sounds can create a problem for you, right? So that's why people say that English is a difficult language. And mind you that, of course, if you compare assets and liabilities, you will find more assets of this language. And that's why it is an international language. English is easy to learn, right? So see that topic again and now read it. And this time I hope you understand that topic well. So English is difficult. Why? There's so many words, right? There are more words in English than in any other language in the world. English is Germanic language, but within the Norman conquest, yes, remember that? Many new words entered the language from French and Latin. For example, the Anglo-Saxons had two words for cooking, cook and bake, but the French, who were perhaps better cooks, introduce many more words: fry, grill, roast. Is that clear? All these are what? The French words. You understand? So, I mean, they had only cook and bake, but the French, they gave new word to it, and now we are familiar with these words: the grill and the fry and the roast. Is that clear? Right? And then in the Renaissance, mean the rebirth of knowledge, what happened? The English language was considered to be inferior. So many words were introduced. There was a rebirth of knowledge. Renaissance. Again, you go back to history of English literature and you will see that movement. Read about this movement, Renaissance, right? So from French, Italian and Spanish. For this reason, we often have two or more words when one would be enough. See here. Examples: freedom from Anglo-Saxons and French liberty, right? Graveyard from Anglo-Saxons, cemetery from French, right? So definitely mind you that the topic you must have discussed, language change. So how language change? This invasions also change language, right? So inventions also change language. Fine. So here we see that this Norman conquest, you see we have got more words, right? Germanic. And of course English has words from German, of course, Germanic, and also from the French, right? See, examples are here: heaven, Anglo-Saxons, and paradise from French, right? So of course there is a website, my dear students, you can have a look at this website, that www.linguinpisa.it. This is a good website, would help you more, in fact. So in fact, in simple words, we say that English is difficult because it has so many words, like thesaurus, in fact, Roger's thesaurus. See, when your computer provides you thesaurus, Shift F7 is the hotkey for it. A word is there, select the word, and press Shift F7, you will find list of words, right? So we learn that since English absorbs words, fine, and that's why if you go back to history of English language, you will see, right, that how English has of course evolved and how new words have come to this language. And that's why you see that people say English is a difficult language, because it has, of course, large number of vocabulary. Of course, English has more words. That's why people say it is a difficult language. And again, English has more idioms. People say it is a difficult language. So again, if you move on, the spoken word often does not reflect the written version, right? So that, of course, that again, when you know phonetics, of course, you did your phonetics in the first semester, so this happens, right? Sometimes your sounds do not go with the written expression, so that again can create a problem, right? When you see the spellings are different from the form, right? When you see bureaucracy, see the spelling of bureaucracy, aristocracy. When you see the spelling, right, sometimes the spellings and of course the phone do not match, right? So that again can create a problem, and which makes this language difficult. And of course, English and the English and Americans eat their words, right? Weak forms, right? So the pronunciation is difficult. If you see again, right? pronouncing words, of course, like put, put, for example, but but, but, right? So wool, wool, not wool, right? food, food. Clear? So of course, I mean, we have some problems when we pronounce these words, and particularly when our L1 interferes. We of course learn Urdu is our, of course, national language, and Punjabi or other regional languages are our, of course, mother tongue. When we learn English, so those languages interfere. In fact, it is not a logical language, and there are many exceptions to the rules. Yes, so of course, right, exceptions always change the rule. That's what you know, in fact. But there are some advantages of this language. The structure of language is quite simple. There are no cases or declinations. The relationship of words depends on word order, right? Word order is what? SVO, and these are different words, right? We call them word classes, right? Adjective, noun, pronoun, adjective, fine, conjunction. These are the word classes, right? And maybe, of course, you people call them parts of speech. Nouns do not have gender, and the adjectives do not change. Right? Considering the ubiquity, of course, Considering the ubiquity of the English language, it is quite easy to find ways to learn it autonomously. 70% of internet sites are in English, for example, and many more, of course, many famous musicians are English or American. This is important. So, in simple, it is international language, and see 70% of internet sites are in this language. So, it's very easy to learn, right? Because this is language of the globe. Wherever you go, if you know this language, you can easily survive there, right? You can communicate with people because it is the language of the globe, right? And of course, internet, the fastest technology for communication, and that is also 70% sites are in English. Why don't you write English? Of course, again the question is, why don't you write English as you speak it? Yes. A very simple, of course, spoken version of English and the written version of the English. You know it's spoken version, whatever you speak, and the written version, of course, whatever you write. And you know it well that, of course, when you write something, you need some rules, right? And what do we call those rules? We call them grammar, in fact. Like even when you see the etymology of this word grammar, so etymology is from the word grammica, from the Latin is the language which means to write. So when you write, my dear students, what do you need? You need some rules, right? So again, when you speak, you try to get your message across. You try to communicate your message. Fine. So here there are some rules, but not, of course, that much. You see, when you write, you need some rules, and of course, since writing needs rules. However, when it comes to spoken version, you try to communicate your message. So there are two versions, the spoken version and the written version. The main reason, of course, dates back to the Middle Ages, when the written English was more or less fixed. Right? There is a problem these days, that this disharmony between oral version and the written version. So if you go back to the reason in the Middle Ages, when the written language was more or less fixed, there are various, of course, different dialects in Britain, and in the 13th century, everyone wrote in his own dialect. Fine. Then the London dialect became the official written language. The dialect of London changed over the centuries, but the written version remained the same. Right? So, therefore, we still have the written language of 7 centuries ago, though the spoken language has changed. For example, the pronunciation of vowel has changed, and many consonants are now no longer pronounced in certain words. So this is what the reason behind that. Why don't you write English as you speak, right? So you go back to Middle Ages, and then you see, you have seen the answer. You have heard, of course, the answer. Right? For example, Wednesday, right? No, right? Gnome, and scientist. Right? We don't read gnome, no, gnome. See, no. K is, of course, this is consonant, elided in fact. Wednesday, right? We don't say Wednesday, Wednesday, right? Scientist. So these are some of the examples. What should be the title, right? Of course, for this one. And the problem goes back to the Norman conquest. The Norman scribes, of course, the Normans, of course, mean scribes wrote English according to French writing conventions. Right? For example, the word country was pronounced word country by the Anglo-Saxons, but the French wrote O for the U sound. Right? So now we have word country, C-O-U-N-T-R-Y, country in fact. In the 18th century, what happened? Scholars tried to improve the language by inserting consonants to indicate the Latin origin of the word. No English person has ever pronounced the word sir in the word island. It was put in to indicate the Latin root as in castle, debt, doubt, receipt, tomb. Right? See? Of course, this is what in the 18th century it has happened, and you have seen the word. We have castle, right? We have debt, right? Maybe in American English we pronounce this castle, right? So receipt and tomb. So the point is, how can I learn to pronounce English well? This is an important problem. The people, of course, if it's a foreign language, yes, it is not the language of communication, so people find it hard, right? To improve their pronunciation, so the question is, how can I improve my pronunciation? So the advice is, you need to listen. When you listen to a native speaker, when you listen to and of course a speaker of Oxford, right? So definitely you would improve your pronunciation. You listen to BBC, right? So there aren't any rules for English pronunciation. Some words that contain sounds that look similar are pronounced very differently. See the word good, right? U sound, right? They are double OD, but we say k, u, d, good. Then food. We don't say food, food. See, almost, I mean, the words look similar, right? But pronunciations, of course, they both have different pronunciation, like good and not food, but food. See, then blood, right? So, and others that look completely different are pronounced in the same way. See, right and right. You're right, I'm writing. See? So I write a letter, you're right. Clear? So see, the form is altogether different. The one word begins with R and other words will be with W. But see, their of course phones are different. So their phones are similar. You understand? So these are, of course, my dear student, that you see that of course pronunciation is not easy. Right? Words look similar, but the pronunciation is different. Right? The word look different, but their pronunciation is similar. Right? So this is what, see, don't despair, in fact, don't be discouraged. You need to learn the phonetics symbol that represents sounds, and the things will seem easier for you. I hope you all have done it in the first semester. You had your phonetics and you learned about these phonemes, right? So you had a discussion on phonology as well, so things would be easy for you. Again, the vowel sounds, just a review for you guys. You can have a look at these vowel sounds, then see long vowel C, right? Long vowel C, B and C, right? S-E-E, C, S-E-A-C and B, right? Then I, Italy, short vowel, rich, sit, then U, put, book, foot, right? Then now long vowel U, food, rude, shoe, to, you, right? Fly, flew. Clear? See, the long vowel, food, right? Then rude, shoe, to, right? And then of course you and flew. Then see, short again, 10, hen, pen, man. Then cut sound, cup, love, bus. Then a sound, sheep sound, hat, apple, right? Fat. Then car, right? Car, father, party, right? Then girl, world, pearl, Thursday, right? See, all the vowel sounds. See more, or, for, door, daughter, raw, more, right? Then right, ago, sure. sure, go, America, color, mother, right? Then orange, sound, nasal sound, orange, Australia, honor. Then again more examples with short, long vowel, bead, short vowel, bid. See, then of course bud, right? Then long vowel, bood, then a bed, then bud, fine, bad, then bard. See, bird, bird. See, then board, right? See here, then sure, cupboard. Then see here, what body, body. Then we have, which vowel do these words contain, right? Earth, earth, hard, Lord, Lord. See here, love, right? Sea, leave. Then Australia, ship, short vowel, rich, short vowel, reach, long vowel, apple, a sound, thirsty, bread, bread, right? Then call. See? So now the diphthongs. You know the vowels, you know the consonants. And one difference between vowel and consonant, you know, my dear student, that vowels, when you pronounce, there is no obstruction, right? E, right? No obstruction. However, when you pronounce consonant, you will see obstruction. T, d, p, b, k, g, l. You have done all these things. I'm sure Sir Arshad, in fact, talked about these things in the first semester, right? So here mean here, near, fear, then late, hate, right? Poor, sure. Look at here, toy, oi, boy. See? Then here, air, right? See here, 5, dive. See? How, now. Look at here, window, hello, right? Of course, it's a dialogue. You can see, you say yes, I say. You say stop, and I say go, go. Oh no, you say goodbye, and I say hello, 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 right? Right? I don't know why you say goodbye. I say hello, hello. So it's a dialogue, of course. You can have a look this one, my dear students. Now again, consonants. Let's just review for you. You all have done it, and you all know these sounds, consonant sounds. And I told you the difference between consonant and vowel sounds, right? So consonant, p, pen, right? See, b, right? Bar. Then bad. Then t, tea, take, d, do, did, d. Then cheese, ch, choose, right? Then June, January, cat, cream, good, right? Fall, fine. Then voice, thin, north. Then those, right? So, rose, fine. She, shoes, right? Now it's tongue twister, right? She sells what? Seashells on the seashore, and the shells she sells are seashells, right? Again, then pleasure, pleasure, treasure. See, m, consonant, man, mother, nose. Then thing, sing, hat, right? Loin, rat, world, Europe, Europe. See? Yesterday all my troubles seemed so far away. No, it looks as thought they were here to say, oh, I believe in yesterday. Suddenly I'm not half, just have a look and you can read it, in fact, and things would be easy for you. These are some websites, my dear students, would definitely help you, right? Go to the website www.yourdictionary.com and find the pronunciation for these words, right? Rain, sword, right? What is it? Sword, appalling, doubt, right? Kernel, right? And of course, colonial, right? Then malignant, right? Malign and malignant, right? Doubt. Then night, exhausting, amazing, scientist, right? One, oregano, birthday, right? Arrangement, cupboard, fine, mountain, further, right? And then test your English, of course. First you must find your level of English. Do a test on a website. See, there is a website test. You can have a look at it. There are 40 questions to establish your level. Quite easy, of course. This is a website. You can do that. Again, a website, a bit difficult, you can do that, right? So again, a bit difficult, you can do that. Testing your level is very important. Once you test your level, you understand where do you stand, and accordingly you put efforts to improve yourself. So again, it's an autonomy. I told you earlier that, of course, an autonomous learner is a responsible learner. An autonomous learner knows how to improve, right? So of course, these are some websites, you can do that. Study groups, of course, 2 or 3 people in the group of your level. Go around the class asking what is your level of English, you can do that. Discuss why you want to learn English, it's important, right? What are the difficulties in your opinion? Find how can you overcome these difficulties, right? Do you know your learning style? Do you have a good memory? Do you have to write down words to learn them? So again, it varies from person to person. And if you find if you have a meeting of mind with people, so that would be really ideal if you know that your difficulties and your friend difficulties are common. So you both can work to address them, right? And sometimes, of course, your strengths may be the weaknesses of your friend, right? And of course, his strengths may be your weaknesses. So in group work, you can benefit, in fact, from his strengths, and he can benefit from your strength, right? So it's a two-way process, right? You can help your friend, and he would help you. So that's why in a group, of course, once you work in a group, and the benefit is that people have, strengths, people have weaknesses. So the group, in fact, when you work in a group, you try to, of course, sharpen your strengths, and you try to remove your weaknesses, or definitely lessen your weaknesses. A group work can do that. So try to write a learning plan, of course. For example, understand better pronunciation by a good dictionary. Do exercises on verbs. Very important. Learn irregular past verbs. Very important. Learn some useful expressions. Very important. So these are some things that you must work on. In your group, you do that. Right? So, my dear students, of course, autonomy, when you are an autonomous learner, so your learning goes on. It never stops. Right? However, when you rely on a book, so maybe you confine yourself. You limit yourself to that. You just wait for the teacher's instruction, and the teacher comes and he tells you, and then you learn. It means your learning stops. However, if you are an autonomous learner, so whenever you encounter a problem, you face a problem, so you immediately try to find a solution to it. And nowadays it's very easy, right? Because you have access to internet, you have access to technology. Easily, you have dictionaries online, you can quickly type that word and find the answer. Or if you work in a group, you can ask your group members. So things have become easy for you. Gone are the days where the students used to wait for days to have a meeting with the teachers. And nowadays, of course, you have technology, you have resources. You can even text if your mentor, if your teacher can respond, right? Or you can Google out things. In fact, Google is the best source. Wikipedia itself is a good source. Whenever you find a term, right, difficult, you simply write on Google, and things would be easy for you. So in my lecture, of course, while listening to lecture, sometimes the term might not be clear to you, and maybe in the lecture I might not have explained that, though I tried, but maybe, of course, sometimes it happens. So what you do that you simply type that term on the Google, and you can press enter, and things would be in front of you. You will find lots of information, and mind you, try to explore things. Of course, this is an age that the more you explore, the more you learn, right? So in a group, if you work in a group, you can do that, of course. Work on your pronunciation. If you are weak in pronunciation, work on your vocabulary. If you are weak in vocabulary, work on your sentence structures. If you are weak in sentence structures, work on your basic grammar. If you are weak in grammar, of course, is important, right? Particularly the functional grammar that we have to use, right? Of course, the word classes, how to use them, right? Grammar is a big area, of course, the big weakness of our students. So you can work on it. Right? That, of course, you need to be good at the grammar, see? And then, of course, learn about regular verbs, learn about irregular verbs. All these things are important. And then learn some useful expressions. Well, so my dear students, there is no, in fact, alternative to self-learning, right? If you are self-sufficient in learning, if you're autonomous in learning, so then the world is yours, right? Then you would not look for in fact, others, right? Because you have understood that now I have to learn, I have to explore these things, and if somebody comes and helps you out, again, you need to thank him. Otherwise, at this stage, your self-responsibility is very important. You need to be responsible, you need to be autonomous, right? Whatever the subject is, you are, I mean, of course you are pursuing this master's degrees, you have stylistics, you have linguistics, you have literature, you have all subjects. So try to be, I mean, independent, right? Whatever novel you read it and read it well. Fine, listen to lectures also, then explore, fine? I mean, find more information, and the more you find, the more of confidence you will gain, right? And that confidence would definitely help you, of course, in the process of interview. So this is what our lecture is about. Today's lecture, that is what? Autonomous. That, you see, you need to have autonomy in learning. You know what is your learning style, and you know what are the problems, and you make proper plans, right? And then you have the control over the learning process, and you of course acquire learning strategies, right? Acquiring ways to use these strategies without the help of a teacher. In fact, again, teacher is a great source, but you cannot rely on the teacher for 24 hours. You have to be responsible, you have to have control over your objectives, you have to set your objectives before you start this learning the program, that in 6 months, in 1 year, you have to achieve this, and set the objectives initially, and then keep on working for the process, right? The process is important, right? The process would definitely help you. More control over the ways in which we learn, again, it's important, right? Being an autonomous learner, being an independent learner, being a responsible learner, you have to set your goals and then put efforts, sincere efforts, to achieve those things. And here, I mean, your sincerity is very important. You have to see that which part of the content is complex, and how can I address it. Do seek help, again, it's very important, but I mean, use different reservoirs of knowledge. Use, whenever you have a time, I mean, ask people, get help. In fact, do put more efforts, right? Personal efforts, I mean, there is no, I mean, you can say second thought to personal efforts. If you put efforts, again a help comes, believe me, you'll be better than others. You just, I mean, wait for the help once. And even again, the point is that whatever the course books teacher use for the language learning process, then of course do in fact use those books in the best way, right? So that when the teacher comes in the class, you have lots of the questions. And before that, try your level best to explore, to find the answers, right? If you try to find the answers, so that learning would be better. And if the teacher comes and he gives feedback, so things will be more clear. So autonomy is important, right? On the content or the organization, and of course the pace of the study is important, right? You need to see the pace, that which pace you are moving on. Initially you might be slow, but once you in fact gain momentum, you in fact become a fast learner, in fact. So with the passage of time, you become a fast learner. So pace of study is equally important, that you have to keep in mind. And then of course you are an autonomous learner, you are methodical, right? So you learn, and then you are disciplined as well. It's important, right? Then you are logical, you are analytical, then you are reflective, you are flexible, you are responsible and persistent, you are creative and willing to take risk, fine, you are confident, fine, you are aware of the learning process. So all these are what if you are an autonomous learner, right? See, you reflect back, right? Because you have awareness, right? See, you are flexible, right? You are not rigid if you are autonomous. Fine, and then you are creative as well. Then of course you are confident as well. So dear students, in fact, my dear students, when of course you have this, when you have this autonomy of the learning process, you set your objectives and you try to achieve them. And believe me, the world is open, right? Nothing is impossible in this world, right? Provided you put efforts, right? There are ways. There are, of course, thousands of ways to seek knowledge, provided you want to, right? So that your personal sincerity is important. Your attempts, in fact, make the difference. If you make attempts, if you put efforts, yes, knowledge definitely comes forward, and you get things. Knowledge is not a way, in fact. Now it is within your reach. If you want to seek it sincerely. So this is what you have to work on, my dear students. So as far as this autonomy is concerned, once you are autonomous, you are able to assess and criticize, in fact, your ways. So this is all that we have in this lecture. If you have any question, you can ask. Autonomy, in fact. Okay, yes, the question is that what is autonomy in learning? That then, of course, we had a discussion on it, that the control, this time the control is with the learner. That again, who gives this autonomy? The teacher is there, of course. Being in fact teacher of this language, because we are, of course, discussing, right, different aspects of the TEFL. So what we do, we have to give autonomy to our learner. Why we give autonomy to our learner? Because we cannot pass on each and everything, right? That it is not, of course, that the knowledge is not in a small glass or a book that I will pass on. No, of course, right? Once you will be autonomous, you will explore things. If knowledge is a sea, right? No teacher can convey each and everything of a subject, right? See, if you start working on this methods of grammar translation method, you need 30 lectures for it, right? Similarly, of course, other methods, if you start talking of, yes, you need, of course, lectures and lectures and lectures to communicate, right? But the point is, if you make your learner autonomous, if you give autonomy to your learner, so they would explore. They want to improve, they would learn, in fact. They would learn, right? Of course, the time factor is there, right? But autonomy, in fact, makes our learner independent. And that independence, in fact, helps him to get. And this is the great value that the teachers have to pass on to the students, right? Teachers must not, of course, make the students that get something from one source, right? Rather, the teacher can tell them different resources, right? There are different resources available, so they can explore, they can browse, and they can get information. They can be research oriented, right? So this is what that being as, of course, a student of this the language, you have to work on, right? You have to be independent, right? You have to explore every possible ways to get it. Teachers is one of the resources. In fact, books are other resources, and websites are other resources. There are thousands of resources. But again, the one point is that if you intend to get something. So if you want to teach language, there are thousands of websites. If you want to be a good trainer, there are thousands of websites. But what you have to do is, you have to explore, you have to browse, right? So where there is a will, there is a way, right? Remember this, where there is a will, there is a way. You want to be the best trainer, the best English language teacher? Yes, there are websites, there are resources, there are books, right? You can be, but for this you have to give time. You have to, of course, give your energies. You have to, give time to this, and finally, you will be the best teacher. My prayers are with you, right? I am sure, of course, a time would come, you would be here, in fact, right? I'm sure a time would come, you would be the best teachers, best English language teachers. And I wish you would teach this language abroad, right? You would teach this language in Canada. You would teach this language in UK, in fact, right? That would be real achievement, where you teach language as a second language, right? And for this, you have to start it from here. Right? There is huge market, big market for English language, of course, here in Pakistan. Still, of course, there are students, right? They have been taught with the old method of grammar, old method, that is grammar translation method. So you know different methods now. We talked about those methods, right? We had a detailed discussion on those methods in our last lecture, in our last semester. And of course, in this semester as well, we tried to go in detail. We tried to discuss things in detail. And of course, now you are a better teacher. With this, I say goodbye to all of you. See you in the next lecture.